Greetings, everyone. Damien Dumar here, publisher of The Last Harvest by Lucy and Mars, available on Amazon in digital format, in physical paperback format, and in audiobook format. So I've been away for a week or two, but I'm back with another episode of The Last Harvest podcast. And a lot of things have been going on in the news recently. I know everyone has probably watched the debate where Donald Trump debates against Joe Biden, and it was rather abysmal, to say the least. It's almost as if Biden handed the entire debate and the election over to Donald Trump. Literally all Biden would have had to have done would be to talk about Project 2025 over and over again, but he didn't do anything. He was just absolutely terrible. And at this point, it's safe to say that it doesn't look like anyone has any chance of defeating Donald Trump. I'm not even sure if Biden will be able to run against him, but who would they replace Biden with? It's sort of, at this point, one can assume that Trump will be the next president, just based on that debate alone. One of the things that agitated me about the debate is Donald Trump's insistence that when you place tariffs on products, that the Chinese pay the tariff. That's not the case. Tariffs are always paid by those who do the importation. So if you imported, let's say, a car or electronic goods or anything of that nature, that tariff that is placed on the goods, whether it's 10%, 20%, 30%, that's paid by you, the importer, and ultimately it's the United States consumer who pays the tariff. The Chinese don't pay the tariff. And Donald Trump basically told nothing but lies the entire debate. Not that Biden is Mr. Honest necessarily, but even for a politician to lie as much as Donald Trump does is pretty alarming. So that's something that aggravated me a lot, that Donald Trump kept repeating this ridiculousness that China will pay the tariffs that he levies on their goods, and the fact that Biden did absolutely nothing to defend himself or even to go on the attack. He just sat there and let himself get steamrolled. So it doesn't bode well, but there's many other things in the news that don't bode well either. Let's take a look at them. So everyone has heard that the United States Supreme Court has done an immunity ruling about Trump. We can look here at a story from AP News. What to know about the Supreme Court immunity ruling in Trump's 2020 election interference case. And it says, the Supreme Court's ruling Monday in former President Donald Trump's 2020 election interference case makes it all but certain that the Republican will not face trial in Washington ahead of the November election. Well, so if someone thought that he might not become president due to legal issues, the Supreme Court has basically handed the presidency to him. And the court's conservative majority said former presidents have absolute immunity from prosecution for official acts that fall within their, quote, exclusive sphere of constitutional authority, end quote, and are presumptively, entitled to immunity for all official acts. They do not enjoy immunity for unofficial or private actions. Well, the issue here is that how do you define an official act? It could be said, for example, that anything that is done while he is president could be considered an official act. So this really changes a lot and is completely in lockstep with what Project 2025 is all about. Here's an article from the Evening Standard where Biden calls himself a quote-unquote black woman in latest gaffe as donors put money on hold. And we see on the left a lot of actions that demonstrate that the left knows that they've lost. So I think this is one of those examples, but there's some other examples here. For example, the Soros-funded PAC shuts off the money tap to his favorite prosecutors as they face electoral uncertainty. So for those of you who follow the news here with Soros, of course, was funding a lot of these prosecutors in cities like San Francisco and New York City, where they were instructed to not prosecute crime. And as a result, in places like New York City, for example, there is lawlessness, where there's no more bail. Crimes such as shoplifting are not prosecuted. It's driving stores out of business, such as CVS and Walgreens and the like, Target. Stores are closing. Police don't get involved. And we have prosecutors like Alvin Bragg, for example, that won't prosecute crimes that normally would be prosecuted. So the fact that Soros is shutting off money to these prosecutors shows that he knows that the game is lost. We have another article here from Bloomberg where Gavin Newsom shocks California politics by scrapping crime measure. And basically what happened is California Governor Gavin Newsom abruptly abandoned a carefully negotiated ballot measure designed to tackle property crime and the fentanyl crisis, stunning the state's political establishment the day after his office trumpeted the proposal. The last-minute reversal dashed Newsom's effort to forge a compromise among Democratic factions in the legislature, where his party has a supermajority to revamp Proposition 47. The decade-old law reclassified some nonviolent drug and property crimes as misdemeanors rather than felonies, and has drawn fire from critics who say it has exacerbated drug abuse and retail theft. The governor sided with pro-business moderates who advocated for tightening penalties for crimes including repeat shoplifting, while pitting him against progressives who raised concerns about racial disparities in arrests and prosecutions. The failure of the Democratic compromise means that only a tougher crackdown backed by the California District Attorneys Association will appear before voters on the November ballot. So here we see where Gavin Newsom, who is a notorious progressive, shall we call him that, has backed down on his stance on crime and is starting to swing back towards a conservative direction. We see Soros shutting off money to these progressive prosecutors who were allowing crime to run rampant in places like New York and San Francisco. So we see on the left a clear sign that they know it's over and that the opposite of progressivism or fascism is on the way. And Soros himself should know this better than anyone, given that he grew up in Nazi Germany. We see also here with the Supreme Court in the New York Post article, it says Supreme Court's Chevron overturn, a victory for the little guy, not for big business. And to make a long story short, the Supreme Court has been overturning a lot of decisions lately and basically ruling against business regulation, government agencies, again, all in line with what is outlined in Project 2025 as promoted by the Heritage Foundation. So on the surface, some of these decisions may appear to be a good thing. Well, I can now have a pistol brace and don't have to pay a $200 short barrel rifle tax. Oh, I don't have to get regulated and I can actually get a quote unquote fair trial without having some bureaucrat act as judge and jury and executioner. On the surface, this may look like a good thing. And it would be a good thing if they were actually doing this with your best interests in heart. But that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it as part of Project 2025 in order to bring about a Christian fascist theocracy and to put enormous, almost dictatorial, tyrannical powers in the hands of the president. And that president will be Donald Trump, as we can clearly see by the debate, as we can see by the actions of Soros and Newsom, who know that the battle is lost for them already. So a lot of things may look like they're in your favor in the short run, but they're not being done in your best interest. They're being sold to you as, well, look, this is in your best interest. This is a victory for the little guy, not for big business. Hey, it's great that you can get a pistol brace and don't have to pay a short barrel rifle tax. It looks good on the surface, but the real motivation behind it is the motivation that is outlined in Project 2025, which is available for free in an 800-plus page PDF from the Heritage Foundation online. Here's an article from the Associated Press. A conservative leading the pro-Trump Project 2025 suggests there will be a new American revolution. And they are not joking about it. Again, you can go read the document. The leader of a conservative think tank orchestrating plans for a massive overhaul of the federal government, I just talked about, in the event of a Republican presidential win, which is pretty much inevitable at this point, said that the country is in the midst of a quote-unquote second American revolution that will be bloodless, quote, if the left allows it to be, end quote. Again, implication there of civil war. If the left doesn't fight back and everyone simply accepts it, it will be bloodless. But if people don't accept it, logically, he's saying that they will be a civil war. Because if it will be bloodless, if the left allows it to be, then if they don't, then he's saying that it will be bloody. Those are his words, not mine. So Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts made the comments Tuesday on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, adding that Republicans are, quote, in the process of taking this country back, end quote. Well, maybe taking it back to the Inquisition times, if it's going to be a Christian fascist theocracy, which it will be if you read the Project 2025 PDF that's available for free online. Democrats are, quote, apoplectic right now, end quote, because the right is winning, Roberts told former U.S. Representative Dave Bratt, one of the podcast's guest hosts, as Bannon is serving a 4-month prison term. Exactly. The right is winning. The Democrats know this. If that wasn't the case, Soros would not be withdrawing his PAC money from his progressive prosecutors. Newsom would not be modifying his soft on crime status if the right was losing. It all ties together. Now it says here that Project 2025 is a sweeping roadmap for a new GOP administration that includes plans for dismantling aspects of the federal government and ousting thousands of civil servants in favor of Trump loyalists who will carry out a hard right agenda without complaint. And that's putting it lightly. It's more than just dismantling aspects of the federal government. Now, of course, Donald Trump is denying that he has any ties to Project 2025, but considering that Trump lies about pretty much everything, we can safely assume that he is lying here again. He obviously is tied to Project 2025. This is without question. Anyone who does the least bit of research will find out that this is the case. And what Trump posted on his Truth Social platform on Friday was, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025, end quote. I have no idea who is behind it." Well, everyone knows who's behind it. That's if he doesn't know who's behind it and he's never heard of it, doesn't know anything about it, come on. Then he says, "I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them." So he wishes luck to those who are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Interesting. He disagrees with some of the things they are saying, although he says, "I know nothing about Project 2025. Well, if you know nothing about Project 2025, how can you disagree with some of the things they're saying? So clearly you know something about Project 2025. It's just so silly. And then it says here, many of Trump's closest former White House aides are leading the project, and his campaign's own press secretary starred in one of their recruitment videos. Well, we all know the truth if we've been watching the Last Harvest podcast here. And Steve Bannon here, he goes viral for remarks to a priest before entering prison. So he's doing a 4-month prison sentence in Danbury, Connecticut. And he says to the priest, quote, "Father, don't pray for me, pray for our enemies. They're the ones that are going to need the prayers," end quote. This may seem like a meaningless statement, but when looked at within the context of many other statements that have been made, such as the next American Revolution will be bloodless if the left allows it to, Trump saying during a speech that there will be a bloodbath going forward. And here is Trump saying that Biden will pay a very big price as Bannon heads to prison. What price will that be? He says Donald Trump again blamed President Joe Biden for what he claims as a weaponization of the justice system, suggesting that Biden is, quote, going to pay a big price for it, end quote. So he also says that Biden has opened up a Pandora's box. Not exactly sure what he's referring to, but what it does imply is that once Trump is in office, that he will go after those that he considers to be enemies. And this is something that has been brought up before. And none of it's looking very good. So at this point, I believe that it is safe to say that Trump will be the next president. It doesn't look like anyone will be able to stand in his way. And we know that Trump is the poster child for Project 2025. And Project 2025 has been in the works for more than 40 years now, going back as far as the moral majority in the early 1980s. The Christian right desires to have a Christian fascist theocracy. They desire to pull off, in their own words, a quote-unquote second American Revolution that will put enormous power into not only the executive branch, but into the office of the presidency itself. And what we see is that all of the Supreme Court justices are paving the way for this to happen by granting Trump immunity, by overturning past decisions in lockstep with what is predicted in Project 2025. We see Samuel Alito flying an upside-down American flag, flying a pine tree flag. We can clearly see that the fix is in. It's not difficult to miss it. So at this point, we have less than 4 months. It's July right now. July, August, September, October, November. It's about 4 months until Donald Trump becomes president. And then I think we're going to start to see some very interesting times, as they say. And for those of you who have been watching the Last Harvest podcast on a regular basis and reading the articles by Lucy and Mars that have been reprinted on thelastharvest.info, we know that on September 25th of 2025 is when Satan returns. And then things really begin to take off. So it's going to be interesting times. Right now is the time that can be considered the calm before the storm. You might notice it's very quiet. It seems almost as if nothing's going on. It's like as if the Titanic has hit the iceberg and we can hear the hull being ripped open, but no one's quite sure what that sound is yet. So enjoy the calm before the storm, because once the storm hits, it won't be going away anytime soon. So on that note, that's Damien Dumar signing off for the Last Harvest podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for being here.